Hello, my name is Hakon and welcome back to another little video on the Empress Effects Zoya, the almost magical patchable synthesizer and effects processor in a little box with colorful lights on a grid interface. Now, most people probably think of the Zoya as a very flexible effects processor, and that's how most people use it. You plug a sound source into it, you have quite a flexible way of creating your own effects in the pedal itself. But it also has a sound engine. It is a synthesizer. It's not the most flexible synthesizer, but it has a lot of possibilities for creating sound as well. And recently I started looking at ways to do FM synthesis on the Zoya. I'm not going to go too in depth into this. This is not a full-blown tutorial. I was just working on a patch and I came across a really nice sound. I just wanted to share it with you. But I'll just talk a little bit about the patch, the way I've done it. I'm not going to say too much about how FM synthesis works, and of course this is not a full tutorial today. I probably will make other videos about that. But very briefly, if you, instead of having a complex oscillator shape, FM synthesis normally only uses sine, of course you can use other wave shapes, but if you use only sine waves and you add them together, you can get other wave shapes by controlling the connection strength. I mean, how much one sine wave is connected is combined with another, and also by shaping them in different ways with, for instance, envelopes and LFOs. In FM synthesis, you're talking about the number of operators a lot. And while it is possible to do 4-operator FM on the Zoya, because I like also adding effects and I only have the Zoya for that. Well, I could use my computer, but I like using the Zoya for that as well, because if I have the effects in a patch on the Zoya, I can also work with the changing the parameters of the effects while playing. So I've gone in this patch, which is called FM 3.2, and that's because this is the third sort of version of FM patches that I've made. I've been working through different iterations of it, and this is like the third version, really 3.2 of the one I've been working on. And I've tried 4-operator FM, and it sort of very quickly gets to the maximum of the CPU, and so in this one I'm using 3 operators. So when you talk about FM synthesis, one oscillator is known as the carrier. That is the main one that is connected to the output, so output. And the other ones are there to modulate the carrier, so using the FM input on the oscillator. So in this case I've got 2 modulators, so I'll call them M1 and M2, like so. And in this case, I think I've got one of them is connected directly to the FM input of the carrier. The other one is connected to the FM input of M1 and also to the carrier and also to itself as well. So you can have an output of an oscillator connected to its own FM input, and it does change the sound, especially when you run it quite hot back into the oscillator itself. So that's my algorithm, that's my FM algorithm for this patch. In addition to that, for each voice, I've got an oscillator that runs into a VCA, and the VCA is controlled by an ADSR envelope, and that's the same for both M1, M2, and C. All of these have this architecture here. And then the output of the VCA is sent either into the FM inputs of the other oscillators, or it is sent to the output in the case of the carrier. So that is the basic synth architecture that I'm using in this patch. I'm not sure if that was properly in shot now. So yeah, so oscillator into VCA, controlled by ADSR, output to frequency modulation input on another oscillator or to the output. A lot of the things you can do that actually makes FM sound interesting is by varying the ADSR envelopes so that the different modulators affect the sound at different times. And that's what I've been doing in this patch. I'm not going to go too much in depth of how this works now, but I'll just play you the sound actually. So, and also another thing I've been doing, because when you're working with FM, a lot of the frequencies you can set an oscillator to, when you send it into another oscillator, they will sound quite grating and inharmonic, and that's because the ratios between the two frequencies are too different, so that it gets more noisy. But if they are any ratio that uses a low number, for instance, you can say 1 to 2, so you have one that is 400 hertz and the other one is 800 hertz, one octave above. That's a harmonic interval, and that will sound good. If you have one that is, say, one that is 200 hertz and another one is 300, that's still quite harmonic because they will match up quite often. And what I've done here is I've used the quantizer to make sure that all the notes that are sent out from all the oscillators are in C major, so that there are fewer frequencies in between, and also for the actual frequency change of the modulators, I've multiplied it by a certain number so that it jumps a few steps, so that it gets more harmonic intervals. I'm not going to say too much about that now, because it also has to do with how I'm working with the with my MIDI interface with the MIDI controller, the MIDI Fighter Twister as well. So, and I also got here, I got a delay and a reverb, which is what I like to use. And also I made now a little keyboard on the Zoya here just to show you what this sounds like. So without any further ado, I'll just play you what this sound sounds like. Yeah, and that's it. I just thought I'd show you that because I thought it was quite a fascinating sound, and I have been using quite different ADSR envelopes for the different modulators and for the carrier to create that kind of sound. And I wasn't planning to make that sound, it just happened when I was working on the patch. So this is actually an unfinished patch. I've still got to, I'm planning to create, one of the things I'm doing, I'll just show you. So what I plan to do is to, in my final patch, and I've done this with a 4-operator FM before, but I wasn't happy with some other things in that patch, is that I create a modulation matrix. So if you can imagine something like this, where you have 9 controls, and of course I'm going to map these to the MIDI fighter twister now, and each of these controls are for the connection strength from the output of each of the oscillators into the FM input of the other ones. So that when you set this controller to full, it should have a connection strength of about 300%, which is about, I think, 20 decibels or something. I can't remember the exact number. Because sometimes going above 0 actually is works really well for the frequency modulation inputs. If you limit yourself to sending it at a connection strength of 100, you're not getting the full FM effect. And that's another thing I will say more about in future FM synthesis videos. So I'm going to have a matrix, which means I can create any algorithm really, because I just choose which ones are going to, the carrier will always be the carrier, so only that one will be connected to the output, but it can modulate itself, or it can modulate the other modulators, and they in turn can modulate any of the oscillators. So by doing that, I can create any algorithm, any frequency modulation algorithm with 3 operators, and I can control the connection strength between them, and that works really well. I just need to iron out a few other things. Another main part of the patch, of course, will be controlling the ADSR envelopes of each of these oscillators. And also I was hoping to include a filter, but filters use a lot of CPU, so I'm still wondering how to implement that in a way that works, because I do also want to have effects on board. It might be possible I'm going to make just an FM patch that does not use delay and reverb, with 3 operators and the filter, and let's see, or maybe 2 filters if I can squeeze it in, just to see if how that works. And then I can add effects later, even though I do like putting effects at the same time. So that's just a work in progress now, and that's what I've been working on here. And I think it sounds absolutely amazing. FM synthesis is really interesting, and I didn't know that much about it until I started dabbling in it now on the Zoya, because if you want to do it on the Zoya, you also have to know how it works. So it is, not only does it make amazing effects and amazing sounds, the Zoya, but also it can be a good teaching device, because you learn the architecture of synthesis when you are trying to create sounds with it. So that's it for today. I just wanted to share that sound with you, and I hope you liked it. If you did enjoy this video, please like, share, subscribe, join me on Patreon. And hopefully leave a comment as well if you have any questions. But of course, as I said, there will be more videos about FM synthesis in the future, because this is an area I'm going to experiment a bit more with. I'm quite enjoying the kind of sounds you can make with FM synthesis. Now, at one point, of course, is that you can use other waveforms besides sine wave to create FM synthesis. But on the Zoya, of course, you can't switch an oscillator from one wave type to another dynamically. You have to set it in the setup, which means if you want to have both a sine wave or another type of wave for an oscillator, you actually have to add another oscillator in the patch, which reduces a little bit the or increases the CPU load. Although it is possible, of course, for two oscillators to share a VCA and an ADSR envelope, so that it might actually be possible to do that without too much CPU being taken up by it. So I will look into that as well, but I do like the kind of sounds you get using just sine waves, and of course that is the classic way of doing FM synthesis. Right, so that's all for today, and thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time with more videos about the Zoya, about the MIDI fighter twister, or the MIDI fighter twister and the Zoya together, or FM synthesis, or whatever else I will just think of making a video of next. Usually I don't have any big plans for what I will do next, and it depends a little bit where my inspiration takes me as well. So if I now suddenly get another good idea for a Zoya patch that has nothing to do with FM synthesis, I might do that in the meantime before I finish my FM patch and show you a bit more about that. So in any case, I will see you then, and goodbye for now. Bye bye.